The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of S4, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast or reproduction of this broadcast or podcast without express written consent of S4 is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Because we don't understand how life formed, it is difficult to estimate this probability. The likelihood of a complex molecule like DNA being created by random collisions of atoms in a primordial ocean is fantastically small. In an infinite universe, it would happen in some places, but they would be very far apart. If we want to find advanced intelligent life, our best bet is to listen for radio signals.
Look up to the stars and the forest that surround. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are they there? SpacedOutRadio.com presents S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and friends. Also, take the time to join the Forest Moon Paranormal Facebook group.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque.
Conspiracy, Area 51, Dogman, Ghosts, Cover-Ups, UFOs. The hidden will reveal itself.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from the beautiful mountains of Concrete, Washington. Tonight we're talking about disaster preparedness. Tonight on our panel we have Eric Markham, our Forest Moon Paranormal Scientist, Michael Hall of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and your host, Forest Moon Paranormal Zone, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Oh, my God, I'm tired. Yeah, it's been a long day. So, yeah, the heat's coming on. We're coming into summer, so it's a perfect time to talk disaster preparedness. And May 25th, the Upriver Farmers Market is starting up, and that is where the Forest Moon Paranormal will have a booth, and we'll start lectures. So, looking forward to that. If you're local to the community, obviously we always look for new team members, and by all means, come out and check us out. And how's our panel doing tonight?
Doing good.
It's a good evening.
Outstanding.
Missing doing it live like I did last week.
Right. He'll be moving up here soon.
Yep.
Soon. So disaster preparedness. You know, it doesn't matter what the disaster is, whether it's volcanoes in our backyard, the Cascadia Subduction Zone, earthquakes, zombie apocalypse, alien invasion. It really don't matter. Disasters are always the same. Some of the responses will be different, but when it comes to preparedness, it's the same. It doesn't really matter if you're in Australia or United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil. It doesn't matter. You always need water. You always need food. And there's certain items you always need to have on hand and certain education you need to have, like how to turn your water off, how to turn your gas off, things of that nature. So, what are some of the hazards summer specific? Anyone?
So hazard specific to what? Summer or just in general for like an
seasonal?
Area?
No.
Seasonal?
Summer specific.
Summer specific, you're going to have wildfires. Wildfires is going to be your big disaster for summertime just because of the heat, the dry, and then, of course, people's carelessness is, where they're out throwing a cigarette butt in places they shouldn't, stupid stuff like that. We've had those issues even here locally before where, we had really hot summers, things were dry, and you'd get somebody that was dumb enough to throw lit cigarette butt out the window, and it catches stuff on fire. So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the things I have to put out in the concrete group that we run all the time too. Is you see all the time on Highway 20, people throwing their cigarette butts out. They make ashtrays for a reason. Better yet, it's state law that if you have kids in your car, you don't smoke in your car anyway. Now, yeah, not all of them have kids in the car so they can smoke in their vehicle. Doesn't matter. But
well, even if you get the people not throwing cigarette butts out, the problem is once it gets dry, thunderstorms. You have natural causes that are beyond our control. So the forest fires are kind of inevitable.
Right. Yeah, and I know last year, a couple of years ago, it was caused by a welding company that was working on a bridge welding, and I believe that started one of the Eastern Washington fires. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You get we don't get a whole lot of thunderstorms in Washington. Occasionally we do, but not near as often as I believe the Midwest does. But yeah, you're absolutely right though. Lightning does cause wildfires as well.
Yeah.
So what do you do to prepare? Go ahead, Michael.
This time, well, not this time, but last summer up in Canada, Dave Scott will tell you, there was a major problem up there, and it went on for weeks. People were, firefighting teams were coming in from all over the country to help out up there. And, I remember talking to one of those firefighters on my trip up north, and he said he was given a day off to be able to, rest, and then he had to go back up for another whole week of work, and he didn't know when it was going to stop. And of course, it's difficult for people to prepare for that kind of thing. But of course, I think the major issue is you have to clear your property and try to have some kind of a buffer between you and any oncoming, firestorm. And that means maybe get rid of some of the tall trees and, of course, the grass that might be growing wild around your place. Anything that you can do to create a buffer, for your property would be definitely something you want to think about ahead of time because it's a big project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes with, if you have brush against your house, not a whole lot you can do for your dead grass. Really not. other than spraying it down on occasion, and then of course it dries up again anyway. And then of course you're wasting water.
To eat it.
And then you got to worry about if you have a well, if you have too much of a drought draining your well. So it's really a fine line you have to walk. When you're, and of course we'll be coming across the fire ban here probably in the next month or two. That's yearly.
Yeah.
So.
And a disaster preparedness is it's whether it's wildfires or anything else, a lot of the stuff is basically the same. It's making sure that you have a route out of where you are, meeting places for family members, making sure that you have backup supplies of food, water, things that you need to travel with, maybe blankets or sleeping bags, whatever that may be, to be able to get, out, having a bug out bag. A lot of the same type of stuff applies to just about any disaster. A lot of people don't think about that, but that's one of the key factors is making sure that you have your basic disaster preparedness stuff ready to go, and then whatever it may be to fit whatever the particular disaster you have to worry about at the time may be.
And the emergency action plan. That's what we'll talk about that for a minute. And you're absolutely right. That's something you get with your family together, your kids together. Everyone knows how to respond. It's very, very much like a fire drill. You rehearse it. You practice it. Your kids should know second nature when you call 911 for an emergency. If there's some kind of a disaster or something, where they're supposed to meet. Every school should have a plan. So if your kids are at school while if something happens, the school should be able to react. And another thing people forget is have an out-of-state contact. For example, my out-of-state contact is my aunt in Idaho. That way, everybody knows if they get separated from the family, they call that aunt in Idaho and check in. So if we call my aunt in Idaho and, so-and-so hasn't checked in, then we might want to start looking for them if we're able. So having the out-of-state contact is important. The other thing you have to look at is if you're on medication, make sure you have extra medications in your bug-out bag. It can be.
Yeah, because, insurance, I know, like on my insurance, they will only fill that prescription when they deem it necessary. So in order to have, to have gotten my backup supply, I've had to take a couple months where I only took half dosages of stuff so that I have a backup supply. Sometimes, if your insurance is not totally a-holish, you can, they have what they call a vacation override. I did that with one of mine when I was coming up to Washington last week because it was going to run out while I was up there. So I actually got the next month's supply, early.
That's a real good point there, Eric. The idea being that I don't think people realize that a vacation override is even available to them. I think that's fantastic because, indeed, there's a whole lot of folks out there, diabetics, and those kinds of things that have multiple prescriptions that they have to take, and people don't think about that ahead of time. They're thinking, okay, I'm going on vacation. I've been planning this for a long time, and then they bug out of town and go on vacation. But they forgot that their medication's going to run out, and they got to go back to their own pharmacy normally to get it picked up. But I have even myself been able to go into a local pharmacy where I am on vacation, and they get authorization from my own pharmacy and can refill my prescription. So that's something else you can think about as well.
Yeah, I've done that on occasion. Or I had a very good working relationship with an ER doc years ago, and I got a really terrible ear infection, and I called him and said, "Hey, doc, can you get me a neomycin or I forgot what it was now. I think it was neomycin drops for a ear infection." He called it, but not everybody's going to have that connection
resource,
or that resource. But I asked because I had put my pills I take for high blood pressure, for my heart, and for my diabetes. I have a fistful of pharmaceuticals, and I was putting them all in. So I'm going to run out of these next week. I went to my pharmacy and said, they worked with me on it. That's something to think of. Count out your pills before you go on a vacation. That's something you can plan for. A disaster where a forest fire rips through the area and you don't know how long it's going to take you to get, be able to get back.
Yeah.
And have your insurance card, your pharmacy cards and stuff like that, or copies, because most of the insurance companies and things like you can ask for extra cards. Have your extra cards in your bug out bag if you have health maintenance meds.
Now, what I suggest with that is, because what we have is I actually have a hand briefcase where I've got extra copies of all the birth certificates, the mortgage, the insurance cards, the Social Security cards, everything that's important. Instead of having to dig through file cabinets and all that stuff as the disaster was happening, I had a briefcase I grab, I throw it in the truck, and we roll. And that's what I suggest everyone have. I also take pictures of your expensive, your TV, all your expensive electronics, anything that's of value to you. Take pictures. Keep a log of inventory of everything in your house. So if it gets damaged and you have to do your insurance claim, and you can't you can't get pictures after the fact, you've got everything right there documented.
Yeah, that's something that everyone should do in any case, whether there's a disaster or not. You just need to make an inventory, even if it's a video inventory, walking through your house very easily. You do that in 2 or 3 minutes. Just sweep through every room and make sure it's all there on tape. Send it to your cloud or wherever you want to keep it safe. And even put on a pen drive, that kind of thing. Just get it off your phone completely. And that way you do have some kind of a record of all those items that could be totally lost in a fire, in a volcano erupting, for God's sakes, in Hawaii, and whatever is going to happen, that would be a good idea.
That's one of the things, too, is everybody forgets that, their phones all have cameras. A lot of people don't even think about that, even though people will stop and take a picture once in a while. They forget that they have a camera on their phone. And almost every person that has one of these phones has one. So it doesn't take much to actually just take that phone around your home, snap some pictures. And then it, just like Michael said, thumb drive, cloud, something like that, get it to where that you can access it remotely so that you have access to it elsewhere.
Good point. Thumb drives, you can, I remember my first compact drive like that was actually a small disk drive, and it was hellishly expensive. Now you can get a damn near terabyte thumb drive for $20.
Something like that, yeah.
It's devilishly cheap to have a thumb drive or flash drive that you can have your pictures, you can have your documents scanned to. It might take a couple hours of your time, but in the long run, in an emergency situation, having that hard drive that little thumb drive could save you a lot of grief later.
Yeah. There is a really slick pen drive out there that is actually as thin as and looks like a credit card. They're just awesome. You slide out the little port, and punch it into your memory device or whatever, but it is actually just as thin as a credit card. And I thought those were sharp because you could always, stack a few of those in your wallet and take off. You don't have to worry about, a pen drive jiggling around in your pocket even or on your keychain. So something else to think about.
There's so much data holding technology out there now that there's really no excuse not to have your documents or some kind of electronic backup on stuff. It's awful easy to do.
And that brings up the whole issue as well, is that if you are a service provider or have a company with databases and those kinds of things stored on a computer, it would behoove everyone to get themselves an external hard drive that just periodically backs everything up. So you can just grab that little box, which is so small now, those hard drives, you can just take that and stick it in your pocket or your briefcase, and take your entire business with you. You don't have to worry about losing data or documents that way.
Yeah, you can get a terabyte external hard drive for next to nothing now. I mean, I think the first one I bought was $80, and now, that 3/4 of that will get you like 2 or 3 terabytes.
Yeah, they're down to like $30-$40, I believe, for a terabyte box.
Yep, they even got those little devices now that can download or back up everything on your phone, which I think those are real sharp too. Yeah, I mean, all your photos, everything that all your documents that are on your phone, you can actually download it onto this little, it looks like a pen drive, but it's got a lightning cable input on it.
And you bring up a good point, because up here in upriver, we have power outages a lot, especially in the wintertime. And, these are things a lot of people forget about. And for our backup, I have, the power goes out, you rely on a phone, a cell phone most of the time. And so we have chargers and whatnot in our truck. So if we really need to charge up phones, the laptop, whatever, we actually have chargers in the truck. We can jump out to the truck, throw them in. You always have a backup plan, though.
Something to think about, too, is you can go right over to Harbor Freight, and for about $20-some-odd, you can buy I think it's about a 5-watt solar panel that you can fold out, and you can charge your phone or whatever else on it. And it's very inexpensive. And you can spend a little more money and get the little suitcase one that's like 13 watts or something like that. It's about $75, but you don't even have to do that. You can get these smaller ones, and then you automatically right there. I mean, any place there's daylight, you can set this thing out, plug your phone into it, charge it up. It's another option, and probably a good idea to have in that bug out bag, which I'm hoping kind of as we go along here, we'll get to what we should be putting in the bug out bag.
Well, like the comms I brought up, that base station, that FM base station, that's hand crank. You ought to have at least, everybody for their thing ought to have a hand crank radio.
Yep,
especially since they're cheap radio. Now. Something doesn't require batteries. I have a couple hand crank flashlights, and I've got at least 2 hand crank radios, but that one was a communications base station that uses cordless phone batteries, so it's easy to find the batteries for it.
Yeah,
very nice.
And So tripping's bringing up, but hopefully the tower is still up, and that's a very good point, which is why I recommend everyone get a battle phone. It's kind of like a mini ham radio, but you don't need a license for it.
Right.
And
we never did sit down and figure out how to sync all of ours up.
No, and you move back up.
Only
here,
so much
no
you
big
can get
deal.
done, and only so much you can get done in a few days.
The other thing I recommend folks look into is CB radio. I don't think, did we ever sit down and discuss the channel? Channel 13 is going to be the Forest Moon frequency for CB. So yeah, we do have a base station, CB. I just don't have the antenna up yet, but I do recommend people get CB radio if you don't want to take the time to get a ham license. CB radio is the next best thing.
Well, the nice thing about CB radio is you can buy a power supply and run it in your house as a base station. But if the crap hits the fan, it goes. They're made to run off a 12-volt battery. So I mean, you take your base station with you. It goes right into the car.
Yeah.
So it's a good mode of communication.
Go figure that Channel 13 is going to be Forest Moon's channel.
That's the Forest Moon. That's the Forest Moon channel. Because if you go up higher than that, then you have to worry about some of the older CBs only go up to channel 23. You got some newer ones that have 40 channel. So just to keep and
most of the 23s ought to be out of service because it was actually, I believe the FCC actually outlawed them or banned. They were deemed obsolete many years ago. The 40s, the 40 channels with upper and lower sideband, and then if you knew somebody, I remember the CB days. Dad had a 40 channel with upper and lower sideband, which were legal, but then he took it somewhere. The guy that everybody knew by word of mouth to get the extra channels, the not quite legal channels, where you never mentioned your call sign or your handle or anything.
Joe brings up an excellent point. I was going to bring this up later on, but you know what? It actually came up in the concrete group that someone was saying they have their bug out bag and all their equipment in their truck. Well, my point was you don't got time to using the dam, for example. If the dam breaks, we have 100 or more cars trying to get up the mountain at once. They ain't all going to make it. You're going to have to jump out of your car and run. So, Joe's point is question. You have your truck fully packed with everything you need to bug out. You realize you're only way off the mountain is blocked. You have a small backpack, PDU jacket, and 5 minutes to decide, besides the dog, what you grab. So I'm going to let you guys take this. I have a sick child real quick.
I should right off the bat, like a .22 rifle or something for hunting. An axe.
Good point.
Well,
I remember years ago in Scouts, wood badge instructors would say, okay, you've got a choice between a knife, a hatchet, or a boot string. Which do you take? And actually, the correct answer was the boot string, because you can make a trap with it. You can use it with a bow to make a fire. There was just so much, there was just this list of things that you could do with a boot, boot lace. Personally, I'm going to go for the 22.
Well,
22 and a sharp knife,
My choice, is you think of a something like a 22 or a gun like that. Problem is bullets run out, so I ain't so much for that one. But a blade, you can sharpen a blade on a rock if you need to, and you always have a blade. It doesn't run out.
So, you can tie a blade to the end of a stick and make it into a spear. I mean, you can do so much with a good solid knife. That's my tool of choice. I mean, if
not even, that doesn't count. You can take that knife and make a fishing spear with it.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I mean, you tie it to a stick and make a spear.
Right. A pointy stick.
Exactly. A pointy stick. Those things don't run out. So, it's the knife is my tool. The knife is my tool for something, in a disaster type situation. It's my way of thinking. For Joe's question is medications. If you've got a couple of things of some dry food that you can grab, throw it in the backpack. Make sure you got a couple of things of clothing, because you're going to need it. Whatever small stuff you can ram into that backpack. Any quick important papers, and a good solid knife. Maybe some string, and head out. And because the rest of it you can figure out from there with those things, those tools.
Well, I'm seeing the chat room. Everybody, pointy sticks never run out of ammo. Blah blah blah. The reason I say 22 is, y'all, you can carry 1,000 rounds of 22 long rifle ammo in your bug out bag. Now, if you are judicious about not wasting ammo, 1,000 rounds is going to last you a long time. But that's why I suggest the 22. It's a good small caliber, small game rifle. Squirrels, rabbits, things like that. You go much higher than that. Like shooting a squirrel with a 50 caliber rifle. There's nothing left. Unless you do like the old mountain men did. It was called barking the squirrel. You shot the limb that the squirrel was sitting on and let the concussion and the splinters do your work. But 22, I mean, like I said, you can have 1,000 rounds of ammo. That, when you're talking to 22, that's a lifetime of ammo.
Yeah.
That's going to last as long as, unless it's an end of the world type situation, 1,000 rounds will get you through most disasters.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My only problem with 22 is that basically your main purpose for having a firearm, as far as I'm concerned, out in the wilderness, if that may be, is to have some knockdown power when you run across a bear or something like that. Not saying that a knife is going to do you too much better, but the 22 is just kind of useless in as far as that comes that way. So I don't know.
Well,
just my thoughts on.
I don't think of it in that line. I think unless you're packing a 45 or a 50 caliber or something ridiculous, a 308, that kind of thing, nothing you carry in your bug out bag is going to help.
My other thought in it too is, 1,000 rounds, that's a lot of extra weight to throw in a backpack. Because that was the question there was, you got all your stuff, it's all loaded in your truck, and you're getting ready to leave, but you can't get out because your way is blocked. Now you have to grab a backpack to head out. I'm sorry, I'm not going to want to shove 1,000 rounds into my backpack and try to carry that when I can have just a knife and a few other things that are much, much lighter and get the hell out.
Yeah, I'm willing to carry the extra weight just to be able to reach out and bag a rabbit or knock a squirrel or a rat or, whatever. I've got the 22s in my bug out bag, and it doesn't really add that much weight. Now, if you start throwing 45 and 9mm in there, like that black bag I had up there with the 45 and all that ammo, okay, now that's a heavy damn bag. The 22 isn't really adding that much. Somebody said, put a good idea, I think it was Joe Monk, he's he's going to have his pointy stick and a 45. So his choice was a knife, 45, dog, cash, cigarettes, and lighters. So,
there's always something to say about a nice slingshot as well. Something that's light enough you can carry everywhere, and you've got ammunition pretty much at your feet. You got to be good at using it, though. Of course, you got to practice quite a bit, but that's always something to keep in your hip pocket if you got one of those folding ones as well.
Yeah, see, that would be more up my alley. And see, everybody's idea on some of these particulars. I mean, there's a base set of things that you should have, for survival, but everybody's going to have a little bit of different idea on how to do some of the outside little particulars that you would be doing for disaster survival. Whereas you would think the 22, I would think a knife and a slingshot, personally myself, just because, like he was saying, slingshot has ammunition laying everywhere. You can use a rock in a slingshot, and if you're halfway decent at it, you can knock the heck out of a rabbit somewheres, and you've got a meal.
Yeah, but if you're an older guy like me who can't use open sights and is relying on a scope, the slingshot's not going to be that effective. But I think you're right. There's going to be things that everybody ought to have, like a water purifier, like a life straw, because you're going to run out of your water supply, and you're going to have to drink out of that river. You're going to have to drink out of that unsanitary water. Life straws are cheap.
Yeah.
The UV sterilizer is cheap. You ought to have something in your bag to extend your water supply with.
Yeah, and life straws and UV purifiers and stuff like that, they're actually going to last quite a while before you have to replace them or have to worry about something else. I mean, eventually you can get to the point where you can boil water, but for that first emergency part, I mean, I think it's money well spent, because I've seen how cheap they are, and they are cheap. You can buy at Walmart for almost nothing.
Yes and no. But when it comes right down to it, boiling water might be the best method, because if you look at, for example, the volcanic eruption, you're going to have sulfur in the water, you're going to have ash in the water. It depends on the disaster. If you're just up playing in the woods, great. If I'm out playing in the woods, I just drink straight creek water.
Life straws are designed to be able to pretty much take just about everything out of the water and make it clean as you drink it. That's the way they're designed. Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
one of the things to take, and it's cheap, is one of the things to pack in your bug out bag is a pack of those conical. Certain coffee makers use them, like conical water filters. Coffee filters. That'll help get some of the gross contamination out. You can sit there and pre-purify, get the mud, the ash, the sediment out, and then use your life straw to, take, that pre-screened water and get a drink out of it. Plus, you should probably have a little bleach in your bug out bag or something to help purify. Or what was those halazone tablets we used to carry?
Right.
Of course, it turned you yellow if you drank them too much.
Another thing to think about too is a flint stick or a striking stick. You can start a fire with. They're very lightweight. You can stick them in your pocket, and as long as you strike it with a knife or a sharp rock, you can create sparks and start a fire pretty much any time. So.
Yeah, most of those actually come with a piece of hacksaw blade or something. Mine came with a piece of hacksaw blade attached to it. But yeah, those magnesium fire starter sticks are fantastic.
Yeah,
and there's perpetual matches you can get as well.
I find the finger saws even better at starting fires, believe it or not, because of the friction.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Because of the friction, it actually starts a fire when you're trying to cut a branch. So I, yeah, you know, and personally, lighters. You know, lighters are about the same size as the flint stick, and just as effective.
Well, you can get a thing called a perpetual lighter or a perpetual match, and it's basically it's like a saturated wick. You put lighter fluid in this little container, it seals up, and it's a combination of the spark stick and the lighter wick. You know, because eventually you can either lose your lighter or, you know, you're eventually going to run out of butane. So having that perpetual match as your last resort isn't a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I want to bring this up real quick. Talking about water, you guys ever try putting a plastic bag over a tree branch and catching the dew?
God, not since Scouts.
Scouts, seriously? No, we actually made a water still in Iraq. I taught my soldiers a modified SEER school where we were actually doing. We made a sundial, we made a water still, and caught water in in the desert. And of course the kill tactics and everything else that went with SEER. But when it came to the survival side, how do you survive in the desert? We don't have to worry about that so much here, but it's still things to consider.
Eric, is that where you dig a hole in the sand and put the plastic in there and put a rock in the middle of it? Is that how you do your still?
That's exactly. Now you can do the same thing in the woods. With you take a plastic bag and put it over a tree branch, and it's the same effect. You'll catch the dew and the evaporation that comes into the bag, and you actually get probably roughly a half a cup. Of course, it depends on how thick the moisture is.
Yeah, fascinating.
Well, around here you don't have to worry about that too much because there's dew almost every morning around here.
We have underground springs up on Haystack, so I've managed to find them. Even in the middle of drought, there's a pool up there.
You know, something else to think about that's very easy to carry is a small magnifying glass. You know, for starting fires with that. That's pretty sharp, pretty easy way to go too.
Now, these are all things we will be talking about in the disaster prep class at the Farmers Market in Concrete. But the thing I'm going to bring up there that I can't so much, it's much easier for people to visually see versus us just talking about it on the radio. But the difference between a 24-hour pack and a 48-hour pack. Because, like Joe was talking earlier in the show, what you grab and go with. Well, I have a pack ready to go. And I'm right there with a lot of people in that, what you keep in your truck. You can't always take your truck. So what do you grab? You grab your pack. Make sure you have some form of weapon. I'm with you on the firearms, but you know what? You run out of bullets if you're up too high or up, too long. So a good knife or a good Leatherman, a good multi-tool. But I'm a very firm advocate for a very good knife, or in Joe's case, a very good pointy stick.
Yeah, I also carry a Leatherman with me pretty much all the time. I don't think I ever go anywhere without the thing. It's always in my pocket. So, because you never know when you got to MacGyver something.
You got it. Yeah. MacGyver is my bug-out hero.
Yeah.
He could do anything with almost anything.
Yeah. And, some of the things that come to mind that I see as being in, let's say your 48-hour pack, your bigger bug-out bag, is is, fire starting material, extra clothing, you know, some dry or canned type goods that you can use for food. And the nice thing about with the cans is you can reuse those cans as other things. So you got to have that. Also, a small first aid kit. You can get those ones that are, 4 inches by 6 inches or something like that. Little first aid kits. Go in a bag easy. Have all the basic necessities you need. That's just a few of the things that come off the top of my head that should be in that bag.
Okay, so Don is bringing up shelter. You know what? You don't need much for shelter. And that's something we'll be teaching or going over when we actually do our field exercise in September. But it's real
especially
simple.
up in your area. I mean, you can make a hell of a nice waterproof lean-to just with the evergreen trees up around where you're at.
Mm-hmm. You take one major stick, the biggest stick you can find, you lean it against a tree, and you take cedar branches, and you basically make a series of sticks. And again, it's much easier to do a hands-on than just to talk on the radio about it. But you basically make kind of a frame of sticks and then intertwine it with cedar branches. If you have a tarp, that's where you put the tarp to waterproof it. But cedar branches are the best way to use for the roof. And then you take moss and you line the bottom of it, dig kind of down so it kind of makes like a cave, and then use moss to line the bottom. And then ideally you have a small blanket. And that goes in your 24-hour bag. But that's your shelter.
Yeah, it can,
kind of like a
I guess
teepee
what it
body,
means
but
is you got to look at where you are specifically. Like what you're going to get for a bug out bag in the Pacific Northwest is going to be different formula. You're going to have different, mandatory things that I'm going to have here in the Piedmont of North Carolina, because there's different kinds of environments. For me, the kind of weather we have, where it's very rainy and very muggy, I'm going to and just because it's so urban where I live, I'm going to have a different set of priorities or a different idea of what I'm going to need to survive. Because basically, if the spam hits the fan here, I'm going to try and get up to my parents in the mountains west of here.
And I'm going to say, this all goes back to your emergency action plan. Because even for our locals up here, I get asked all the time, what if the dams break? Where do we go? Well, I can tell you where to go, but that doesn't mean there's not a gate there. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a gate there. So ideally, you take your family, you do your own rehearsal, you figure out which roads have a gate, which ones don't, and the quickest elevation to get up. Now, for example, if you're going up Burpee Hill is a sliding hill. So you have 100 cars trying to get, evacuate going up Burpee Hill, for example. It is always sliding. So I wouldn't go up Burpee. If you're on our side of the river, that gate's going down. We're going up Haystack. But it all goes back to your emergency action plan and rehearsing, knowing where you're going to go. And that goes back to, do you know what kind of trees are in your mountain? If you're in North Carolina, obviously your tree species are different than what we have in the Pacific Northwest.
Completely, yeah. Yeah, we're going to have mostly deciduous trees, a lot of maple, a lot of oak, where you got mostly evergreens out there. What I noticed out by you was a lot of evergreens, a lot of cedars, a lot of, for as far as building a shelter, you have actually better type of trees than we do.
And another form of shelter is, when I was a kid, I remember growing up, and there are these kids that they actually got inside a very large cedar stump, and they made a cave, and they got car batteries, and they had lights down there and everything. But a stump. Find a good stump and just dig a hole.
Yeah,
Perfect
you probably
shelter.
got more. Your area is going to have more like that because it didn't get timbered off quite like this area did. There's very little old growth anywhere around here that you would find a stump big enough to do that with.
Right. Now, we have a lot of old growth.
If you have that resource, go for it, yeah.
Yeah. And again, take your family out for a day hike. Find out if there's caves in your area. And obviously, before you have to use that cave, make sure there's nothing else inhabiting it. But
yeah,
and that's why
wastes a good cave.
That's why the EAC is so important, and it doesn't get encouraged. It doesn't get talked about. It doesn't get discussed enough. Now, your family EAC is completely different from a farm EAC. If you have a farm, that's a completely different emergency action plan, because then you got livestock to worry about, crops to worry about. You have a whole lot of different, a completely different spectrum. And I actually have farm emergency action plans that I can bring in when we actually go over all this in the class. I'll be doing the same thing at Dave's Caribou Paracon as well, as going over the emergency action plans and disaster kits and what you can put in your vehicle. We'll talk about first aid. I know I saw people talking about first aid in the chat room. We'll go over that here in a minute. Probably the second hour. So we're coming up close to the hour. But what you put in your vehicle. So I'm going to use search and rescue for example. A search and rescue 4x4s. What I had in my truck was spare parts. Radiator hoses, belts, POL products, oil, coolant, things of that nature. You break down, you should be able to fix one side of the road unless it's something major. A good toolbox. It didn't take, this day and age, you can get tools, a dime a dozen at garage sales, at dollar stores, at, Harbor Freight. Tools just aren't expensive like they used to be, just for basic wrenches. Yeah, Markham, get out of my head. He's sitting there saying Harbor Freight in the chat room. But yeah, a good toolbox, a good first aid kit. My first aid kit's pretty much a trauma kit. A tow rope, jumper cables. Let's see. I carry about a 6-foot pry bar, and that's pretty much for if we come across a car accident, I can rip a door open if I have to. Before the fire department gets their jaws of life, if it's someone that needs to get out now, I can pry the door open. And talking about floods real quick, so I know I'm rushing to the top of the hour here. And yeah, Joe, road flares, fire extinguishers. I've got 2 fire extinguishers to stay in the truck. But I want to talk about flooding real quick because, it gets mentioned every year at flood season. Don't drive through standing water. Anyone else want to discuss that for a second? Is it wise to drive across a road that's got standing water on it?
Hell no, because you don't know if it's been washed out. And it might not look like it's moving. I've seen people where it wasn't that deep, but they went across the water and it swept them right on down the path. You're basically going broadside into a river with a vehicle. That's just it's not smart.
As I recall, it only takes 12 minutes 12 inches to actually float your car. I think it's 12 inches.
Actually,
I have to look that up real quick.
It can be less than that depending on how fast the water's moving. You get enough pressure and water flow moving, you can be just a few inches of water that can hit your tires and get under them enough to move you, start sliding you sideways.
Yeah. So unless you're in a Unimog or a duck, you don't want to go across standing water.
No. But you see it all the time. And then, of course, water rescue gets called in, search and rescue gets called in, EMS gets called in. I'm of the very firm belief that the more you keep your fire department, your EMS, your law enforcement board, the happier they are. But, it's lack of common sense that is probably a dominant factor in most of the call-outs, especially when it comes to flooding.
Yeah.
And we were up on break time. Corey, let's go ahead and go into break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the first aid kit.
Yeah, exactly. All right, when we come back from break, we're going to continue talking about disaster preparedness. Tonight on our panel, we have Eric Markham, our Forest Moon Paranormal Scientist. We have Michael Hall of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and Eric Cooper of Forest Moon Paranormal. Join us every Saturday night at midnight Pacific Standard Time. You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and The Fringe FM. And for you local listeners, you can catch our shows on KSVU 90.1 on your FM dial, Saturdays from 10 p.m. till midnight. Check out Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott Monday through Friday, Spaced Out Weekend with Joe Roop Saturdays, and now a new host, Tess Nicole Thomas Peterson from Four Corners Paranormal will be hosting Sundays, all at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also check out The Fringe FM with shows like Lighting the Void with Joe Roop and a plethora of other good shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, The Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed on tonight's show by tonight's hosts and guests are not necessarily those of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays, Spaced Out Sundays, or spacedoutradio.com. Listener discretion is advised. And now back for hour number 2, we have Corey Ruiz, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, and S4. You can find Forest Moon Paranormal on Facebook. And for more information on S4, visit spacedoutradio.com. And now, here's Eric Cooper and Corey Ruiz.
And welcome back, everyone. For those of you just joining us tonight, we are talking about disaster preparedness. On our panel, we have Eric Markham and Michael Hall. Welcome back, everybody.
Glad to be here.
We are here.
There we go. All right. So let's discuss what needs to go in your disaster kit real quick. So when FEMA and Red Cross and all the agencies talk, they suggest having, I believe it's 3 gallons of water per person, per household, per day. That sound right?
Yeah, you're not going to carry that in a bug out bag. That's 9 gallons per gallon.
Right. That's essentially for if you're locking yourself down.
Oh.
Like if the power goes out, if the volcano goes off, for example, I'm going to stay in the house as long as I possibly can. If you try driving, ash will clog your air filter. It'll clog your engine. So I would try to bunker down as long as I could. If you look at the longer term, the volcano goes off, that means the dams are breaking. If there's an earthquake, Cascadia subduction zone, goes off. That probably means the dam's going to break. Those are the disasters you want to prepare for up here the most. Again, what's recommended, what I recommend, anytime you move, get with your local, DEM, Department of Emergency Management, find out what the hazards are in your area. The disasters, or my threat assessment for this community, We have two volcanoes, which is Mount Baker Glacier. We have the Cascades Subduction Zone for earthquake. And not so much tsunami because we're not close enough to the ocean. But we have 5 dams that are an infrastructure, non-secured threat. Very low law enforcement with high drug and criminal activity. Landslides, winter storms, summer storms, wildfires, and the list goes on. These are things you want to find out when you move. If you go to a new area, a new state, a new country, find out what your threat is, and then plan for it. Any input? Oh, Markham, yeah, you hit the zombie whacker. Yep. Yeah. Zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, the thing is, you can go so overboard with a bug out bag that it's impossible to carry the damn thing.
Yeah.
It comes to the point where you guys say, what do I need to survive? You need food, you need water, and you need to keep yourself warm, warm enough that you don't die of hypothermia. So those are the things you have to concentrate on. So getting a good base layer, like some cheap, not Under Armour, but I bought some cheap stuff at Walmart, works just as good. Starter makes it. So just a base layer. And it's lightweight. You put that down the bottom of your bag, so if you get cold, you've got that. Hey, pantyhose. I mean, back when I was in Scouts, we had the Klondike Derby, and in Michigan, there was already about 4 foot of snow when we went out for our Klondike Derby. Hey, having a base layer of pantyhose on to catch the air, to capture heat. Yeah, works great.
Yeah, and Trippin's in the chat room saying layers. Yeah, I put a t-shirt on and a heavier coat. That way you've got the heavier coat for later. And you get hot, you take it off, you still got your t-shirt on, or even a flannel. You can use your heavier coat for a blanket later. Think multiple uses when you're looking at what you're going to put in your bag. And think weight. How long are you going to be able to travel with that bag? My 24-hour pack is roughly 20 pounds, roughly. And that's because I have about, extra pair of pants. Socks are important. If you have to remember anything, remember socks and a hat. Because if it's winter, where's your heat going to go? What's going to be damaged the fastest? Your feet? Your feet get wet.
Your head. Yeah.
Yep. All your heat comes out of your body out the top of your head. So your coat, you get too hot from walking, like Tripp's saying, wrap the coat around your pack. That's a great pillow or a blanket, either way.
Well, I like those. I like those ponchos that you could. They're cheap. I think they're Swiss Army, or they're in a weird flectarn or alpenflage type of color, but they're big enough to go over a pack. They're not that much. They're not that expensive. And if you're in a rainy environment, I mean, my father-in-law and I both had these. We'd be out fishing, it'd start to rain. You flop one of these things. It's like having a little pup tent. You can, you can set in. So, I'm a big fan of those kind of ponchos.
Yeah. Well, you can use a poncho to keep dry. You can use a poncho for a shelter. You can use a poncho for a blanket. I mean, there's multiple uses for a poncho.
Yeah, it's like the old days with the shelter halves. You could use a shelter half for a poncho, for a lean-to, for haul things in. Those were handy chunks of canvas to have. just a little bit heavy for a bug out bag. Might be better to have a couple shoulder halves in your escape vehicle.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you can sit and talk, and we're going to go over medical stuff, but how much medical stuff do you really want to pack up a mountain? The medical kit in the truck is a fully stocked trauma kit. I've got a BP cuff, stethoscope, splint materials, but am I really going to carry that up the mountain if I'm running? Hell no. I suggest for a small kit, a tourniquet, various Band-Aids, a couple ACE wraps, a medical tape, which you can pick up in the dollar store.
Antibacterial.
I recommend Tylenol. I recommend any kind of pocket medication you can grab. Oh God, my brain's tired.
I would suggest getting a bottle of liquid Lysol.
Okay, I can
liquid
get on board with
Lysol kills everything, and the liquid part. You can use that as a disinfectant on wounds. You water it down a little bit. Liquid Lysol is some great stuff. And I'm talking about the stuff that comes in the dark brown bottle, and it's actually a reddish brown fluid. That stuff is fantastic. And as a microbiologist, I tell you that crap kills just about everything. I mean it. The only thing, what it doesn't kill, bleach will take care of. So.
Yeah, I was just going to mention a little thing of bleach would be a good thing to have too. You can even at least purify water with some drops of bleach. It's about six drops per quart or something like that.
Yeah, and another thing with there's a tablet form of bleach that you can get in like a little tubular container. I think they used to be called Halazone. Let me look. Hell, I got the world at my fingertips. Let me look at that.
You're not thinking of hypochlorite, are you?
No, it's a military canteen water purification tablets.
Yeah, okay. Those are usually hypochlorite.
They're Halazone tablets. There they are. Halazone tablets for the bleach thing. The only thing is, if you drink water, if you have to drink a lot of water that's been purified with Halazone, you're going to start turning yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the side effects.
Good to know.
Now, Trippin is also saying, duct tape and cotton balls instead of Band-Aids. You would, I agree with that because Band-Aids are going to come off easier. Duct tape and cotton balls are going to absorb blood a lot faster and will be more durable. So, and there's so many uses for duct tape in the survival scenarios. That, I'd throw a roll of duct tape in your bag along with cotton balls.
Well, plus cotton balls are fantastic fire starters too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You just dip them in a little Vaseline. Stuff a bunch of them into a little pill bottle. Take them with you.
And so I'm looking at the list. Hydrogen peroxide is great for disinfecting as well, and they actually sell. What's that warehouse store in Cedar Lake Quarry?
That's Coho Liquidations.
Coho, yeah. I picked up a pocket spray bottle of hydrogen peroxide for like 50 cents at Coho.
Whoa.
Yeah. And, you can't go wrong. It's pocket size. Perfect size for a bug out bag. It's amazing what you can find. And I know Markham's a very avid eBay user. So you can find all this kind of stuff on eBay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
as well.
hydrogen peroxide is okay in that there's a lot of organisms out there that are resistant to hydrogen peroxide. The peroxidase, they're not susceptible to it. I'm trying to think, is it peroxidase negative? Anyhow, bleach and Lysol, as far as disinfectants go, they're going to wipe out almost everything, because there's a really common organism you can get a wound infection, Pseudomonas aeruginosa. That stuff can live on a bar of antibacterial soap.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually, I did an experiment in college where I was using triclosan and putting different concentrations of triclosan into my auger plates, and I don't think I ever, I don't remember. That's why we always have our notebooks when you're a scientist, trying to remember everything. I don't think I ever got a concentration high enough that Pseudomonas wouldn't grow on it. That's like the number one thing they worry about in a burn ward is Trichomonas getting in there, because it's a super bug.
What about straight rubbing alcohol? That always seemed to be, pretty good.
Rubbing alcohol really doesn't. Basically, when they come in to draw your blood and they swab it down with alcohol, that's just so you feel good. It takes 40% isopropyl it takes care of some stuff, just some of the surface yeast and some of the surface normal flora, but it's not sterilizing the site by any stretch of the imagination. If we want to do blood cultures where you have to actually have an aseptic, sterile site to draw the blood, we use a completely different drug or different chemical for that. It's alcohol, so the person you're sticking with the needle feels good. It's a what do you call it? Like a security blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know that. All right. So it seems like the bug out bag. Your major things are shelter, fire, medical treatment, clothing, and possibly food.
I wouldn't. You brought up the point. I was just going to bring it up. I wouldn't waste a whole lot of room on a whole lot of food, because one, it takes a lot of space. It takes a lot of weight. I like granola bars.
Or to have a dehydrator.
Well, yeah, and there you have a lot of space.
I used to do that with I'm saying think ahead. And I have a vacuum. Right. I have a vacuum sealer and a dryer. So when I find a deal on, say, apples are cheap. Mm-hmm. I'll dry up a buttload of apples and vacuum seal them and put a date on them, rotate. It's like, well, those are getting old. I probably use but dry some fruit, dry some things, make some beef jerky on your own. You can buy a really cheap cut of meat and, make a jerky out of it in your oven and vacuum seal it. So you've got a little protein, you got, to take you over until you can bag your rabbit or whatever whatever food you're going to eat in the wild. And it's actually a good idea to maybe have I haven't seen them lately, but I haven't looked. You used to be able to get this handkerchief. It was like a edible plants in your area. It was a bandana, but it also, I think I had mine up there. It's probably still in the truck, but it's got like in your area. it'll say, have like a little picture of these edible plants or the parts of a plant that are edible, like cattails or, that kind of thing.
Great idea.
Well, and that's where it's important, knowing what's in your area that you live. I know if I go up my mountain, I've got salmon berries when they're in season. I got blackberries. I've got the wild blackberries. And knowing your medicinal plants is, well, good to know. Because like I pointed out when you were up here and we were hiking, a bleeding heart, for example, you pull the root, is a great blood stopper. And if you chew on the root, is a great anti-anxiety. We have St. John's wort growing wild up here. Knowing your plants and knowing how they're used. We used to actually teach classes on medicinal properties. Back in 2012, 2011, we actually had plant walkers that came up and taught classes for us. But knowing your wild plants is important, especially when you have to bug out.
Well, there's a really good book out there. It's a Peterson's Guide to Medicinal Plants. I love the Peterson's Guides series. They're mostly known for their bird books, but I helped compile data that went into the one on reptiles and amphibians, so I'm kind of partial to the Peterson's Guides. But
really?
It shows you regions that these things will be in. It gives you a picture, a description. The Peterson's Guide to Medicinal Plants is pretty much a must-have, I would say. And I'm there again, I'll have to look it up. I can't remember if it was by the whole country or if it was Eastern, because some of the stuff is regional. But that is an excellent source, and it's not going to take up that much room in your bug out bag, and it could be damn handy.
Nope. Trip jogged my memory here. Because you're saying, food equals bait also. Well, you talk about bait. Knowing how to set a trip line is important, because that's going to catch your rabbits, it's going to catch your squirrels, it's going to catch, whatever might come into your camp that's small enough that you can eat. And, personally, I've got steel jaw traps. And they're convenient enough, I can just hang them off my pack. Doesn't take up space inside the pack, but it's right there if I need it. Set up my camp, set up a jaw trap outside the camp, catch my food if I have to. Because, again, firearms are great, and I probably pack my pistol essentially for defense, because the other thing you got to look at in disasters is who might else come around that's going to try to steal your stuff because they didn't have the foresight to pack their own.
Well, that's a joke I've always made. That's a joke I've always made. Yeah, go ahead and stockpile your gold, jewelry, and your food. I'm stockpiling bullets. I can come tell you, with these city people. And yes, that the Peterson's Guide, it's Eastern and Central is one like my area, Eastern and Central United States. You guys have on the Pacific Northwest have your own Western edition because of the such widely different, flora in each area.
Well, I'm not sure. I think I have a couple Peterson guides, but I also have the Audubon books for the specific regions as well. And they don't go so much into medicinal, but plant identification, and you can look it up. But, catching your wildlife, catching your food is important, but defense is also important. Because when you're not going to be all the way up on the mountain. And, it was, I can't remember how long ago, but there's actually a prepper group here in Washington that didn't train their people how to survive. They trained their people how to kill, because their whole concept was, why should they prep and survive? Get ready to survive. Well, all they got to do is kill their neighbors and take their stuff. And they actually made it on the Prepper TV show, talking about all this.
God.
So you're not you've got to prepare for.
I joke about that, but not, it's not.
No, there's actually groups out there that have that mindset, and so in my bachelor's program for this week, I actually have to go into the emergency planning and how looting comes into your emergency plan. And, you look at Hurricane Katrina, they actually brought in the National Guard to handle looters. And you got looters no matter where you go. Dave was even talking in Canada, when they had the wildfires, they actually had a tactical team that was actually hiding in the woods, just waiting for looters. It was a tactical law enforcement team. So when you're talking about the common family that's getting ready for disaster preparedness, it behooves you to have some form of protection, because when you're bugging out, you don't know who's watching you bug out, and whether or not they're going to try taking your stuff, and being ready for it. Not talking paranoia, just talking preparedness. But at least knowing how to fight.
Well, yeah, I would probably pack, just personally, because of capacity and weight, I would probably carry in a situation like that, I'd probably carry the 9mm. Because the 45, it's heavier, the ammo's heavier. Yes, it's got stopping power, but it's only got a 7-round mag. Whereas the 9mm's got a 15-round mag, and if I pump 15 9mm into you, you're going to die. You're going to stop doing whatever it is that's making me pump, 9mm rounds into you. So, the number of rounds that gun can carry would probably make it my choice for defense. Or a 12 gauge. My 12 gauge is pretty light.
A shotgun will be ideal. Unless you had a single shot, then you got to carry more rounds for it. You got to look at weight. You got to look at weight.
The Mossberg 500, which is a pistol grip shotgun, it's called the Mossberg 500 ZMB, like zombie, ZMB, chainsaw.
Yeah, it's a chainsaw.
It's a breaching weapon. It's got a front. The front of the barrel is made in such a way that you can put it up against a door, blow the lock out, and the barrel's not going to blow up. It's got a breaching tip on it. Plus, it's fairly lightweight, and it's a good all-around 12-gauge defense. That's what's loaded next to my bed in case there's ever a home invasion, because I don't want to have to get up blurry-eyed and try to aim at somebody.
Well, I
want to just point in their general direction.
That thing, you just put it on your hip, and I mean it's got a loop handle on the top of that thing that's connected to the loading stock, and I mean you can pull back and load that thing and fire just as fast as you can crank that thing. There's a reason.
Oh yeah, you don't have to pull it up. You lock your. I fire right-handed, so my trigger finger's on the right hand. You don't have to pull that thing up. That chainsaw grip that you cock it with, that you load the chamber, you lock your left arm, and that's just it's fine. For a 12-gauge shotgun, it's a very easily handled gun.
Well, it's because it's
I really like
a sweeper.
Right. Yeah, it's just, the thing about emergency preparedness is we think of what we need to keep our family, our survival, and I think where the problem a lot of people don't think about is defending themselves against other humans. When people got nothing left to lose, they lose it. That thin veneer of civilization that everybody wears is going down the crapper if they ain't got no food, they ain't got no water, and they're starving. They're going to take.
And
the same person that hugged you in church is going to cut your throat to get your food and water.
But I'm going to say, I think that's where the military kind of prepares us for that aspect of it.
Well, yeah, I think, there's a lot of people that are actually, if something like this were to happen, I think a lot of people they'd be waiting for some government agency or somebody to come bail them out, or, we'll stay in our house because, Big Daddy government's going to come and help us. And, I can think of a lot of situations where that crap isn't going to happen. It was thinking like that down in New Orleans that caused a lot of people to die during Katrina, because there's such a thing as a pooch that can't be screwed, and you can't get in to help people. My worry about where you live is the road. If Mount Baker started to erupt, or if there was a flood, you'd really have no choice but to run up Haystack Mountain, because you don't have enough infrastructure and roads in that area to get everybody to evacuate. Even if they got out of the counties, they're going to hit the cities where there's traffic. There's going to be, just a complete knot of traffic. The cities aren't designed to let traffic move through in an emergency.
No. And that's why I like exactly where I live. And, and you hit something else right on the head, too, is, if it was just an individual is one thing. But when you're talking about the family running up a mountain, something to think about is kids. So, what I encourage is everyone in the family has their own bag. The kids have their own small, even a school backpack. And, a change of clothes. They don't have to have the food or like the grown-ups do, like the adults do. But I would throw a deck of cards in there, or a coloring book, something to keep the kids entertained while you're on the mountain, based on the age of the kid. If they're old enough, hey, a knife. And then you got some of these families that got babies, infants. Then you want to think about maybe a couple diapers. There's a lot of very
throw some cloth diapers in there, because they're reusable, and worst comes to worst. I guess a lot of it depends on what kind of disaster are you expecting. In your area, I would say it was either flooding or earthquake followed by flooding, because once those dams burst. But you've also got Mount Baker, as close to Mount Baker as you are. By the time, thankfully, I guess in a way, by the time you knew you had a problem, it would be, and you wouldn't get the whole word out, probably. The pyroclastic flow would probably wipe everything out up to Cedro Willie and Burlington. That's... But non-end-of-the-world type situations, I guess you'd be,
and then we have...
Well, you can base all your survival needs on the mountain. Being able to get up Haystack Mountain gives you an advantage in a lot of ways. You know where you're going to go. and you know what's up there, you know what resources there are, and having done your homework that way, you know what your bug-out bag needs for that given environment.
Right.
And I think that's basically the idea, as you know what the basics of your bug-out bag should be. There's certain basics that every bug-out bag should be. The other part of it is, like you say, is doing your homework to know what other things are you specifically going to need for your area, for what disasters may happen there, and what resources are available.
Now, let's wrap up the show with what are some resources people can look up? Well, you got redcross.gov. You've got FEMA. FEMA's got a whole lot of resources you can find, bug-out bag ideas, where to prepare, how to prepare. Ready.gov, another FEMA source, but it goes into specific hazards. What I use personally for disasters around the world is called RSOE, RSOE. Some people use the National Geological. What I use is, it's actually an alert map. It's RSOE EDIS. And it tells me about biological hazards, infrastructure threats. Look at that. There's actually a heat wave in California. No, a vehicle accident in California. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. There's an epidemic hazard going on. It looks like in Washington. But yeah, go in, RSO. I'll go ahead and plug that into the chat room real quick. And this is actually what I have it set for pop-ups, so it actually sends me pop-ups anytime there's any kind of a threat.
Eric, there's also some legal concerns that I always caution my clients about during disasters, depending on what kind of disaster you're talking about. But the idea that if you're losing your residence, if you're not able to get to your bank, those kinds of things, you need to determine if you can get a copy of your last will and testament.
Right.
Your legal documents like durable power of attorney, living will, community property agreement. And what I think is a good idea is to wait till you sign them and notarize them and everything's done, but then take pictures of your legal documents. Have them on your phone, have them on a pen drive, take them in your bug-out bag or whatever, because finding any kind of a legal document that you might need after a disaster might be very difficult. And actually, I've done a little study on this whole idea of legal documents in emergencies, and come up with a kind of a detailed program that I call the LDOC program, the Emergency Legal Document Program, where first responders and those kinds of personnel who are there during disasters can actually have these documents on their electronic devices, smartphones and iPads,
right,
and those kinds of things, where they're not attorneys, but they have they're created by an attorney, myself, and they can use them for people's emergency needs for estate planning at the very least. The worst case scenario is that your spouse or your parents or whatever are in a disaster and they die without their access to their legal documents, and everything is up in the air then of how everything is going to be distributed. they've even got these document programs now where you can sign them by touchscreen, just like,
right
at the store whenever you're doing that. So, yeah, I thought about that ahead of time.
I've got to say, the advances in technology and technological jumps in gear, as well as smartphones with legal documents and whatnot, has made bug out bags, disaster preparedness so much easier than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody back then would probably want to, bring copies of all their mortgage, their will, and stuff them in a bag or a briefcase and try to schlep that around, through the forest somewhere. But this way you can, put it on a pen drive and at least you've got it there. Same thing also with your emergency medical information about yourself. What's your blood type? You take high blood pressure medications, and all those kinds of things could be easily put. I've even seen pendants go around your neck that have that downloading capability.
Okay, right. They make the emergency bracelets. You can get dog tags made up with your blood type and things of that nature. Okay, so Paris is in the chat room saying, did we use the word bug out bag 20 years ago? Well, 20 years ago, let's see. No, I don't think so. You say the word prepper anymore because a lot of people that are into disaster management, into disaster preparedness, fall into the prepper field, and there's been so much ridicule in making preppers look like crazies. Well, I'm not a prepper by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just prepared. Big difference. I don't sit here and stockpile 20 years worth of food. Don't have room for it. And frankly, food goes bad. So why are you gonna stockpile 20 years of food or water for that matter? Just be ready for the next disaster that comes up. There's no reason to stockpile it. In fact, I think it's illegal to It's illegal to collect water and stockpile food and water in some states, I believe, isn't it?
It is. It's kind of interesting that it would be illegal to catch rainwater in rain barrels off of the roof of your house nowadays. In some states, that is the case. You can't stop the water from flowing in its natural flow to the various streams and lakes and estuaries that it's supposed to go to. It's an interesting idea that you can't do that any longer. Used to be everybody had 50-gallon barrels on every corner of their house just to catch the rainwater.
Right.
Well, it's illegal to do that in Colorado, and it's illegal to do that in Washington State in certain areas. They tell you can't catch, you're not allowed to catch. Not that would stop me, because I don't let I'm kind of an anarchist. I don't let piddly-ass crap like that get in my way. Something we haven't mentioned, if you're in a situation where you're going to have to weather it out at home, and we've talked about the family. Don't forget, if you've got cats and dogs, you might want to have, you need to stock some food and water for them. I mean, you can use the toilet tank water for your cats and dogs. It's clean enough for us to drink, but most of us would probably think, "Hey, toilet water." And I guess it's technically possible for it to back burp and contaminate that, but for the most part, the toilet tank water is good for your animals. But you should have 20. I got 2 cats, so I've got an emergency 20-pound bag of cat food in my pantry. And like and there'd be water too, because face it, if things got really bad and it was between starving or eating your pets, I don't know, I don't know. I'd have a hard time, but I'm not sure. I couldn't eat BB. I think BB and I would end up eating Cleo, but I just, I wouldn't be able to do that. But yeah, we need to think about our we need to think about our pets too when we're considering, some kind of disaster where we've got to stay put.
And I fully agree. And these are all things on our disaster list that we have that'll be out in the actual class that we do as well. Touching real quick on if you move to a new area, you don't know anything about the hazards, contact your local Department of Emergency Management, and they should be able to actually give you their threat assessment of the area that you live and what you prepare for and how to prepare for it. Also, there are, the Community Emergency Response Team, otherwise known as CERT. Many communities have a CERT team, which they go through, I believe it's 3 months of training on very brief search and rescue, very brief medical, how to triage, very brief fire suppression, very brief of many different areas. They do a real quick field exercise, and they're actually at the disposal of the Department of Emergency Management if there is a disaster. Another one I want people to look at is the Map Your Neighborhood program.
Hold on.
Did we lose Cooper?
We lost Cooper. We'll bring him right back here.
Yep.
It was that time of day.
Yep. We know it's about the end of the show when his phone drops.
It never fails.
There he is.
But the Map Your Neighborhood program, real quick, it's usually sponsored through the local fire department, and there's a booklet that you get, and you take it to your immediate community. So in my case, it would be Haystack Road. For locals here, it'd be Arnold Lane, Sobeck Lane, basically about 6 houses, sometimes a little bit more. And you get to know your neighbors. You know the skills of each neighbor. You know who's disabled. You know who do you need to respond to first if there's a disaster. Who's going to need help the first? Who's got the most kids? Things of that nature. Get your community together. And in the booklet, it's kind of cool, but they actually have a sign that you put in your window. One says help, the other one says okay. So that when you walk and you check on your neighbors, they have a sign up in the door that says, I need help now, basically. And so the Map Your Neighborhood program is an excellent program for you all to look at. A CERT team, some communities have them, some haven't found them yet. CERT's not new. It's been around since about the 1970s. But it's basically up to, finding volunteers is hard. And CERT is all volunteer run. So if you don't have one, look into starting one. But, disaster preparedness, it doesn't really matter where you're at, again. There's disasters everywhere. Everyone's got their own threats. And these are things you need to look at. Now, we're coming up into summer, and this is the wildfire season. This is where you need to start hydrating. It's supposed to be in the 80s tomorrow and 80s on Monday. I believe 80s on Tuesday. So we're getting into the hot season. And getting ready for the hot season is a whole other world up here. I think Corey can agree with that. And Markham soon. Well, even Michael. But Michael's got Seattle.
Yeah, it can get pretty warm.
That's a whole other world
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we got the ferry dock here in little old Edmonds. Can you imagine what kind of traffic or lack of traffic as far as the traffic jams will be happening even on the ferry boats trying to get from someplace to someplace else across the water.
Mm-hmm. And, you guys have the other threat of, if there is an earthquake, then you have to watch out for tsunamis.
Right. Yeah.
So,
we've had those in the past here, those tsunami warnings, even in Puget Sound.
Right. So whereas you have tsunamis, we don't. We don't have to worry about that up here in the mountains. It's not going to hit us up here, but we have, and you have Mount Rainier closer to where you're at, so you still have the volcanic, side of things. Not so much landslides where you're at, but my point is everyone's got their own threat assessment of their own community to do. Up here we have, again, a high crime rate with very little law enforcement. We have one ambulance for about a 50-mile radius with 2 volunteer-run ambulances. So when our ambulance goes downriver, there's no medical support up here unless somebody actually jumps up to staff one of the other 2 volunteer ambulances. So we have a very low medical support at times. Anyone else is a volunteer fire department. And I think what disturbs me too is the volunteer fire departments don't have a basic life support truck. They have EMTs, but I think any fire department should have a BLS truck. That's just my opinion. Because the purpose of the BLS truck isn't for transport. That's what the ambulance is for. But the BLS truck is to stabilize. So when it comes down to it, BLS trucks would enhance the medical field up here while the ambulance is getting up here. There's always room for improvement in any community, and these are just some things to look at. So any last comments before we wrap up the show?
I could definitely say that our community has a lot of room for a lot of improvements. It does seem, unfortunately, that there's, that our area up here, because we're further away from the centrist of the communities, they definitely don't supply much in the way of cash flow for our emergency vehicles and first responder stuff up here, that's for sure. We definitely seem pretty shorted, so it's, communities like ours are definitely the ones that need to take the time to really learn disaster preparedness, especially because we really can't count on first responders being immediately available like other areas can in case of such emergencies, for sure.
Yeah. And there's a whole section of the country, the Midwest, any farms out there, people that live in rural areas all across the country have those same problems. They're quite a ways away from emergency aid if they need it, and they need to assess their local areas to figure out how they can help each other when emergency responses are going to show up for quite a while.
And that's where first aid in general is a great skill to know. You can usually approach Red Cross, find out what the next course is going to be. There's safety companies that offer it. In fact, Forest Moon's going to actually be doing a certified Red Cross course soon once I get a hold of one of the emergency companies, probably in Burlington, to see about setting one up. But yeah, I think first aid is one of the skills that everyone should know. just at least at a minimum, the basics. You know, if you do come across like a car accident and you have your basic skills card, you're still covered by Good Samaritan Act as long as you don't go beyond what your skill level is. And you'd be able to answer that one a little bit better.
Yeah, you're right. You know, the whole idea is if you're reasonably trying to help someone in need in a stressful situation, you're pretty much covered by that Good Samaritan law. Obviously, you know, it's going to depend on the circumstances and the aid that's been being rendered, but it's what we all need to do is help each other during a major disaster.
Right. And
it's just
that's
one
reason.
The angels of our better nature is going to be what comes out, though. That's the problem.
Yeah. You know, too many people jumped on the lawsuit bandwagon, which is really what cut down on people not wanting to help.
Yeah, that's
well.
Sure.
Yeah, I kind of think you know it's like, well, you know, somebody gets helped, and next thing you know, they get sued. Well, I'm kind of the idea. It's like, well, F them.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Pretty much, if I don't know you or I'm not acquainted with you, my compassion doesn't run that deep anymore. It's sort of like, sucks being them. But now if it's family, friends, you know, my circle of my community, like you and yours, the people over in Washington, oh yeah, I'd die for you folks. But for the average stranger, you know, not taking the chance.
But you know, that's actually also why we created the Concrete and Upriver group on Facebook, was basically to get the disaster information out. And if somebody needed help, they could post it. Hey, look, we're having the power's out. We're needing help up here, and no one's available to help. And you know, Corey and I have jumped up and run up and set up generators and assisted people as needed.
Yeah, it's a good community building tool to have that. That thing, you know.
You know, because neither one's got the knowledge or the ability to help their neighbor or help themselves. And if you can, we do. And you know, and that's the purpose of pulling a community together, either through a Facebook group, you know, through some other web source, through community meetings, and getting to know your community, know the weaknesses, know the hazards, and prepare for them. That's the main point of an emergency plan. So, anyway, we're coming down to the end of the show. Go ahead.
Well, there's some really good social media apps also that will hook you up with your neighbors. Those are kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, which apps?
I think one of them is called Neighborhood. Those kinds of things. There's various ones, but if you went to the Apple Store and you punched in neighborhood social media neighborhood groups, it would pop up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Those are good things to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show tonight, guys. Great show. A lot of good information put out. And again, we start Wilderness Survival class on the 26th at the Upriver Farmers Market. It's going to be by the swap meet. We got our first class we're putting out. In June, we're doing disaster preparedness, like we did tonight, but it'll actually be hands-on a little more. We'll have the forms to fill out for your emergency action plan. And y'all have a great week. Hope to see you at some of the events, and look forward to when Markham moves here so we can actually do live shows at Corey's. And
Indeed.
Go ahead and take us home, Corey.
All right, we can do that. I would like to thank our panel tonight, Eric Markham, our Force Moon Paranormal Scientist, and Michael Hall of UFO I-Team. Join us next Saturday at midnight Pacific Standard Time as we talk Bigfoot and other cryptids. You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and The Fringe FM. And Saturdays on KSVU 90.1 for the local listeners on the FM dial. I would like to thank all of our listeners because without you, there is no S4. Good night, and remember, keep your eyes to the skies.